Zang Fu, The Organ System of Traditional Chinese Medicine by Jeremy Ross, page 183, chapter 15, Emotions, the Emotions and Behaviour. The degree of harmony between an individual and the environment is reflected in the behavior of the individual. Harmonious behavior depends on three closely interwoven factors: physical health, a balanced flow of the emotions, and proper development of the intellectual faculties. In this chapter, the emotions are artificially separated from the other components of behavior for convenience of study. The word emotions, as used here, refers to the fluid movement of feelings as experienced by the subject and as manifested by their behavior, as in anger, fear, jealous, grief, and so on. However, the emotions are not necessarily pathological factors. The changing flow of the emotions is part of healthy behavior, varying with environmental pressure, inherited tendency, age, stage of development, and other factors. Emotions are only associated with disharmony when their flow becomes obstructed or irregular, when they become deficient or excess, or when one or more become abnormally predominant or over the others. Emotional imbalance may then give rise to Zang Fu disharmony. Alternatively, disorders of the Zang Fu may result in emotional disturbance, and often a vicious cycle is set up. For example, an imbalance of Gan may give rise to anger and depression, which in turn aggravate the imbalance of Gan. This relationship between Zang Fu disharmony and emotional imbalance will manifest in the behavior of the individual, perhaps creating environmental disturbance which then aggravates the internal disharmony of the individual, or elaborating the vicious cycle. For example, the extreme anger resulting from blazing gunfire may manifest in vocal and physical violence, and the reaction of other individuals to this violence may exacerbate the condition of a blazing gunfire. Within the body, emotional disharmony is associated with disturbance of the function of Zang Fu in the formation and transformation of substances, and with disturbance or obstruction of their movement, their Jing law, between the different organ systems and tissues. Normal emotions and the emotional disharmonies associated with each of the five Zang are considered below. Classifications of the emotions. Table 15.1. The seven emotions. Qing. Chinese word Xi. English words joy, happiness, gaiety, excitement, pleasure. Chinese word Nu. English words anger and irritation. Chinese word Si. English words meditation, contemplation, pensiveness. Chinese word you. English words anxiety and sorrow. Chinese word Kong. English words fear, extreme anxiety. Chinese word Jing. English words sudden intense fear and fright. Chinese word Bei. English words grief and affliction. Table 15.2. The five feelings. Wu Qi. Chinese word Xi. English words joy, etc. Which Zang associated with Shen. Chinese word Nu. English words anger, which Zang associated with Gan. Chinese word Si. English words meditation, etc. Which Zang associated with Pi. Chinese word You. English words anxiety. Zang associated with Fei. Chinese word Kong. English words fear. Zang associated with Shen. Sometimes yo, anxiety, sorrow is omitted from the seven emotions, and C is split into two. C, worry, and yo, anxiety. And hence, worry is often associated with P and anxiety with Fei. Furthermore, Bei, affliction, grief is often included along with yo, sorrow, anxiety in Fei. Also, there is not complete agreement as to which emotion is associated with which Zang Fu. For example, some consider worry damages Fei. Others consider worry injures Pi. Some group sadness with deficiency of Shin and lack of joy with deficiency of Shen, and suggest it injures Shin. Others group sadness with grief and sorrow, and suggest it damages Fei. All this ambiguity merely reflects the fluidity of the emotions, which are constantly rising and falling, and merging and transforming into each other. There are many shades of emotions, and it is not possible to give them all precise and rigid names. Some, for example, anger and fear, are basic and come into nearly every list. But the five feelings or seven emotions do not even give enough primary emotions, let alone the full range of shades and nuances. For example, there are pride, greed, jealousy, cruelty, hate, vengefulness, envy, and so on. There are other systems which are more flexible and extensive, but no system of classification of the emotions can be wholly satisfactory. The five feelings and the five zang. Fear and Shen. The emotions of fear is strongly linked to self-preservation, the will or desire to live. Following the stimulus, there are sensations of fear, fright and terror, and there may be temporary loss of control over defecation and urination. There may be immobility, the paralysis of fear, or the attempt to escape from the danger, flight, or to combat it, fight. Each of these three possibilities may be appropriate in particular circumstances. Paralysis may be associated with weakness of Dan, the paralysis of indecision, and fight may be associated with a linkage of the emotions of fear and anger, and of Shen with Gan. Extreme fear has obvious cerebral value. It is sudden and temporary. However, the continual stress of modern living may result, in some individuals, in a state of fearful anxiety which is less extreme but chronic. This may be linked with a feeling of panic in joint disharmony of Shen and Xin, with worry in disharmony of Shen and Pi, and with anxiety in disharmony of Shen and Fei. Also, fear may be of a wide range of phenomena, of being in enclosed spaces, of being alone, of not being loved, or of sex, of the unknown, and so on. Indeed, in the opinion of the author, the limited language of the five feeling and seven emotions is wholly inadequate to deal with the subtitles, subtleties, and complexities of emotional disharmony. Shen is associated with the emotions of fear and fright. If they are extreme, then Shenqi may descend, and the individual may temporarily lose control of urination and defecation, since Shen governs the lower orifices, the urethra and anus. Extreme or chronic fear may injure Shen. However, Dr. J. H. Shen is of the opinion that grief affects Shen, and that when grief is locked inside and not outwardly manifested, Shinchi is weakened and Shenchi is damaged. Anger and Gan. Anger, associated with Gan, is linked with a violent bursting out of emotion. The accompanying sound is shouting, and the mode of action is wrenching and pulling. Bursts of anger may be accompanied by bright red face and trembling of the muscles. However, although anger may be closely associated with fear, there may be a distinction between shivering with fear and shaking with rage. Failure of the free-flowing function of gan, depression of ganqi, may be associated with frustration and depression and periodic outbursts of anger. This may arise if there has been much frustration and obstruction of the feelings and actions of the individual, so that the chronic frustration may result in alternate anger and depression. Deficient gan yin and hyperactive gan yang are more associated with feelings of edginess, irritability, and moderate anger, and these gan disharmonies may arise from chronic irritation and annoyance, especially if the individual is already feeling hypersensitive. Blazing gunfire is linked with severe and violent outbursts of rage. Anger may also arise from being frightened, threatened, insulated, or injured. The allied emotions of hatred, resentment, intolerance, and so on are beyond the scope of this discussion. Joy and Shen. Happiness associated with Shen can be that wonderful feeling of lightness and a release following successful resolution of a long-term frustration and difficulty. In this sense, joy is a child of anger, as in the mother-son relationship of five-phase theory. But joy may also be associated with excitement, laughing, talking, and general social hyperactivity. Also, joy may be associated with pleasure, languor, sensual enjoyment. There are many levels and facets of this emotion. Excess joy is said to injure Shen, since it scatters the Shen Qi, so that Shen becomes confused and disordered. According to Dr. Shen, excess joy overexpands Shen, just as shock and fright may overcontract it. Deficient Shen may be associated with dullness, apathy, lack of vitality, and lack of joy. However, it may be difficult to separate lack of joy from depression due to depression of Ganshi, and from sadness, sorrow, and melancholy associated with disharmony of Fei. The two Zang most concerned with maintaining a balance of the emotions, and the two most susceptible to emotional disturbance are Gan and Shim. Gan is responsible for maintaining a smooth and even flow of the emotions. And if Gan is disharmonious and there is irregularity and obstruction of this flow, the emotions may become extreme, fluctuating, and inappropriate. Shin is responsible for housing Shen, and if Shen becomes obstructed or disturbed, there may be extremes of depression or mania. The most extreme disturbances of emotion and of behavior arise from disharmonies of Gan or of Shin. Pensiveness and Pi. C. The emotion associated with Pi is variously described as pensiveness, cogitation, contemplation, and meditation. It is said that excess thinking, excess study, obsessive thinking, and worry injure P and may depress the functions of transformation and transportation involved in digestion. Some Western texts have associated C with sympathy, the emotion of caring, compassion, and enfolding, but in the experience of the author, Chinese sources refer more to pensiveness than to sympathy. Grief and Fei. Grief, associated with Fei, is the pain of loss, the pain of letting go. Associated with it are the related emotions of sorrow, melancholy, and loneliness. In TCM, Anxiety is also linked with Fei. Whether sadness is included in this list or interpreted as a lack of joy and associated with deficiency of Shen is perhaps unimportant, since all these related emotions will tend to stagnate the Zongqi, the chest, and hence weaken the function of both Fei and Xin. This may result in weakness and stagnation of qi and xue throughout the body. According to Dr. Shen, worry injures Fei, since unhappiness and worry weaken the breathing. The five feelings and five phases. Students of the major Western colleges are familiar with basic five-phase theory, which is ably discussed elsewhere and will not be debated here. In five-phase theory, there are set correspondences between phases, Zang, and emotions, as shown in Figure 15.1. It's said that via the cycle of Shen, promotion or production, each emotion may give rise to the next by the mother-son relationship. For example, fear promotes anger. Also, via the cycle of ko, or control or conquest, each restrains and it is self restrained. For example, fear controls joy, and joy controls grief. A third relationship is that within each phase, an excess of the emotion may injure the Zang, or conversely, may result from disharmony of that Zang. For example, excess anger injures Gan, or Gan disharmony may be associated with excess anger. However, anger, for example, does not always give rise to joy, nor does joy always arise from anger. Also, pensiveness may control emotions other than fear, and fear may be controlled by emotions other than pensiveness. Again, excess grief may not injure Fei. Fei disharmony may not be accompanied by grief. Grief may injure Zang other than Fei, and Fei may be injured by emotions other than grief. In general, the five-phase theory approach to the emotions is incomplete, limited, rigid, and artificial. It's not it is only of use in giving a preliminary theoretical understanding of emotional relationships, and its use in the clinic all too often leads to the facts being twisted to suit the theory rather than the theory being adjusted to suit the facts. The variety of human emotion is subtle and complex, and ill suited to the restriction of a rigid system of classification. Emotions and yin yang. Lack of a unique emotion, whether from obstruction or deficiency, may be seen as yin, whereas excess of any emotion may be seen as yang. However, some emotions seem more yin or more yang than others. For example, anger is more yang and active than pensiveness, and joy may be more yang and extrovert than sorrow and anxiety. Nevertheless, each emotion has its own yin and yang aspect, which may transform into each other. Frustration may rise up as anger and fall back into depression. Fear has its more yin, passive aspects of paralysis and immobility, which may transform into its more yang aspects of flight and fight. The arbitrary division of people into deficient yin and deficient yang types, discussed on page 204, may include emotions. The thinner, deficient yin type tends to irritability, anger, restlessness, hypersensitivity, and extroversion. Wrist, the plumper, deficient yang type tends to be more phlegmatic, less active, and more introvert and prone to depression. However, this is a gross oversimplification and of use only as a most general guideline. More specifically, deficient Shen Yin, the foundation of deficient Yin of the other Zang, is associated with sign of heat and anxiety, Risk deficient Shen Yang is more associated with signs of cold and depression. If inefficiency includes deficient Xin Yin, there may be disturbance of Shen with overexcitement and irritability. If Yang deficiency includes deficient Xin Yang and deficient Xin Qi, there may be deficiency of Shen with dullness and lack of joy and vitality. If Xin is obstructed by phlegm, there may be a predominantly in pattern, cold phlegm distinction, with signs more of introversion, depression, and inactivity. Or there may be a predominantly yang pattern, phlegm fire agitating Xin, with signs more of extroversion, violent mania, and hyperactivity.